Hey everyone, this is Jason from GameRave.com, otherwise known as Danger Boy, and we're back with GameRaveTV. Okay, after all the seriousness and crazy antics and ranting and raving and so forth, I figured this week we'd go back to our nice short videos and have some fun with this one. A female reader from the last episode asked if we could do an episode on variants, and not to leave a damsel in distress, I figured we'd run with that theme, since it is our bread and butter, is all about the variants. So, last week we finished blaming the VGA. This week, we blame Canada. Let's do it. Alright, now, before we go any further, it has to be said that when we say Canadian variants, it's not like there's, round bacon in there, or like it's a totally blanket term. Essentially, and by default, it's just a release that took place in Canada. And for some reason, either the third party or Sony themselves added something to it or changed the package for that release. We're going to start with the hardest to deal with type variant and move all the way up to the easiest type variant. The very first one is actually Vagrant Story from Squaresoft. And this actually started off as an interesting problem with the guys over at RF Generation. Hello! And what it was that the retail SKU that I had on hand on file was different from the one they had on their file. And in trying to get in contact with the person who had the actual game, we couldn't figure out what was weird and what was wrong and so forth. After finding a new sealed copy on eBay, it turns out that there was an actual second manual in the back of it, and the manual was in French. And it was like, oh, okay, cool, it's probably in Canada. They do that type of thing. In fact, the Dreamcast was actually well known for them basically just shrink wrapping French manuals to the outside of them. So after we had that solved, I got kind of curious and started hunting, and because I'm an idiot and didn't listen to another friend of mine online who was like, oh yeah, I can stumble across them all the time, now I'm hunting for them. But the next variant is the C variant, and as far as I know, this is the only one I have that's a C, unless the Harry Potter one was one as well. But for Formula 1, this is the normal US release, and the reason I call it the C variant is because the SLUS number ends in the letter C, and it is on both or I should say it's on all the manual, the disc, and the back insert. And once I picked up the Canadian copy, I figured there would have been an extra manual, and it wasn't. In fact, aside from the retail barcode being different and the SLUS number slightly different, the only difference between these two releases is the cover. Like, they went through all that trouble just for a picture of a car. What is interesting, though, is that in this case, the PSRM number, and for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, basically the SLUS is an ID number. Like, this is the licensing number they would give to a publisher for when they start working on their game. The PSRM number appears right here on the lip of the disc, right at the very end of the copyright info. And I've always treated that as a printer's mark, meaning like, okay, this is the disc that we're actually going to print now. Here's the number 1. Okay, here's the next to print. Here's the number 2. It's a theory of mine that the PSRMs will actually help us get a much better and more complete picture of what may or may not be missing from what's known about the PlayStation 1 releases. What's tricky, though, is that the PSRM numbers aren't all sequential. A lot of times you'll see a greatest hits disc, instead of, like, let's say the normal game was 1070. A sequential PSRM, like in the Formula 1's case, would then be 1080 or whatever number it is. A lot of times it's the final digit that's only different. So if the regular release were 1070, the greatest hits might be 1081. This doesn't apply to all games. It's fairly clear when we started mapping out certain releases that Sony kind of changed how they were dealing with, changes in different print runs and so forth. So we're working on trying to sort that out too. Back on track. The final Canadian variant is the easiest one out of all of them, and these are the F variants. Now, so far, if I remember correctly, it's pretty much just Squaresoft that falls into this category. Just like the C, the F appears on the SLUS, but what's nice is if you can't read that in like an eBay auction or on a thread sale, if they show the back, it's clearly marked with the Canadian flag up in the corner. And like I said, Square seems to be the only real person with the F variants, and there's a lot of them. There's Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy IX Greatest Hits, Chronicles. What's important is that one of the releases, and I think it's Origins, Origins actually came shrink wrapped with the manual slapped to the back. It wasn't actually in the box because of the thickness of the manual. So if you're going to start hunting Canadian variants and you see Final Fantasy Origins, you need to actually email the person and verify it's got the second manual with it. There was also an interesting situation with Final Fantasy IX in Canada where they actually forgot to give you one of the manuals and you had to actually have it mailed to you. So that would explain why there's the Final Fantasy IX a little bit harder to find with the Canadian variants. That all being said, I am hunting these, and I would like to have a complete set of these variants to help with the PSRM cataloging and so forth. So you're going to see a list of games that are confirmed that I know for sure and actually own myself. Scroll appear right here, and then I'll have them down below with the links, or at least have a list for you. I've heard a rumor from a friend online that Monster Rancher has had a French manual as well. If you guys can help me out, either by selling me copies of games you have that you don't need anymore, or point me in the right direction of other French variants, that would be greatly appreciated. That's about all I have for this week. If you guys have any questions, of course, just email, Twitter, reply down here. However you need to get in contact with me. Take care, guys. We'll see you next week.